Hello, thank you for joining Craig's Gun Channel this week. This week is the start of our firearm operation and basic maintenance series. And we're going to start this week with the Beretta 92 series. This is a Beretta 92 FS. It was the same version that was basically adopted by the U.S. military in 1985, designated the M9, and continues to this day as the military service pistol for our armed services. The 92 series was developed in the mid-70s by Beretta and was subsequently adopted by a variety of law enforcement agencies and militaries throughout the world. It's had a variety of models and developmental changes that have occurred over the years. They all share some common functionalities and traits. One of the most distinctive, of course, being the open slide that gives it its distinctive look. The open slide was developed to ensure reliable functioning in adverse weather or environmental conditions, such as dust, dirt, sand, and has proven to be a reliable firearm. It is a full-size pistol, chambered in 9mm, and high-capacity magazine. It came standard with 15-round magazines, which has now been upgraded to 17-round many times. There are 18-round magazines available that still fit flush within the grip of the firearm. They have higher capacity magazines that have came out, all the way up to 32 rounds. They kind of look goofy. They stick out of the bottom of the pistol. Like I said, they look odd, but they're out there. There's a couple sister firearms to the 92 series in the 96 and 98 that come in some other chamberings, such as the 40 Smith & Wesson. So let's go ahead and take a look at the Beretta 92 FS and some of the basic controls in operation and see what we can find out. Before doing any work or even handling a firearm, even to just look at or for maintenance and cleaning, you should always do a safety check to ensure that the firearm is in fact unloaded. So we'll go ahead and do that real quick. In the case of a firearm that has a detachable magazine, you want to release the magazine. And in this case, you can see that it is, in fact, no ammunition in the magazine. However, that does not mean that the pistol itself is empty. You also need to open up the action and visually check to make sure that there's no ammunition in the action. Because just because the magazine is out does not mean the firearm is, in fact, not loaded. So we'll go ahead and open it up. And as you can see here, if you take a look in the chamber, it is in fact empty. There's nothing in there, and so we are, safe at this point to go ahead and to go over the controls and disassembly of the Beretta 92 series pistols. So first thing is we'll go over the basic controls of the pistol. So the very first thing, is, of course, is the magazine release, which is right there. You simply depress that button to release the magazine. The next item, of course, you have the trigger and the hammer. The hammer itself, this is a single action, double action semi-automatic pistol. So when you, in this condition with the hammer down, you basically, to fire the weapon, you would just need to pull the trigger back. That would serve the function of cocking the hammer. If you notice, watch the hammer. It would cock it and then release, which would fire the weapon. Upon firing, when the slide ejects the round and loads the next chamber, now the hammer is in the cocked position and it's in the single action mode. So then it would just take a very small trigger pull to fire the weapon. So that's the trigger and the hammer. Now, this lever here is the safety. If you notice it, the red dot means it is ready to fire. So putting that down would put the firearm in the safe position. This also functions on the Beretta pistol as a decocker lever. Now, this is on the FS. There are some models of the Beretta 92 series which do not have a decocker. However, this one does, the 92 FS, the M9, and the various derivatives. Basically, most of them have this. And what that does, let me go ahead and put it back on fire. If the hammer were pulled back and it was ready to fire, and the reason why I want to point this out is because this tends to scare people the first time because they think the firearm is going to fire, but that isn't the case. This is how it's supposed to function. when you put it on safe, this will not only put it on safe, it will do what's called decocking the hammer. So here, I'll just go ahead and show you. When you pull the lever down, it decocks the hammer, and of course the hammer flies up. It looks like it's going to shoot, but it doesn't. It's just releasing the tension on the hammer because it is actually in safe. The safety on the Beretta 92, when you put it in safe, it physically removes the linkage between the hammer and the firing pin, rendering the firearm safe. So other controls. You have the slide stop here. Now, when you have a magazine in the pistol, this little tab here, which you only see when it's basically out of ammunition. If you notice, if there were ammunition in it, that would be down lower. That pushes on the lever on the inside of the frame of the gun and will push it up. And so when the magazine is empty, when the last round is fired, what happens is it pushes that lever up and it locks the slide back. And what that allows then is you could release the magazine, put a new magazine in it, and then you just push the lever down, just pull down on it, and that will release the slide, putting the firearm in battery ready to fire another shot. Now, you can manually push up on that if there's no magazine in it. You just push up on it while pulling the slide back, and that will lock the slide back. And it actually locks into a little recess which is under the slide. You can't really see it, but it's there. On some semi-automatic pistols, there's a little notch that it locks in. You just can't see it on the Beretta. So the other controls. This is the takedown lever right here. And the way it works is you just pull down on it. However, there's another control on this side. It's right here, that little button. And what that does is it unlocks this lever. If you see this pin right here, that blocks this from being pulled down, and that prevents the gun from basically being able to be accidentally disassembled. When you push up on that button, so the button's right there, when you push up on it, see if you can get this into the picture, it will, the little button there comes up, and there's a slot in it which then allows this disassembly lever to be able to be pulled down to disassemble the firearm. So you push the button in on the other side, pull the lever down, and that allows the slide to unlock, and it just removes off the front of the gun. So the frame of the pistol itself, for general cleaning and maintenance, you would want to basically clean and remove any residue and dirt or fouling that's anywhere. And that's pretty much it. You don't want to disassemble any of this. That's work that should generally be done by a qualified gunsmith. Or if it's something that you really do want to undertake yourself, you need to really make sure you know what you're doing, because if you damage or make any modifications or anything to any of those components, it could render the firearm either unoperable or inoperable, or it could make it unsafe. So you want to stay away from both of those. Just so you know, this section right here is the ejector. That's what will actually push the empty cartridge out of the firearm when it's cycling the action. So we'll go ahead and set that aside for now, and take a look at the slide assembly itself. Now, if you notice, here's the recoil spring, and there's a guide rod inside. It is not a captive guide rod, so you do need to be careful when you're disassembling this, because the spring, it is under tension, and it can send the guide rod flying pretty far across the room. It's pretty good size, so it's not likely you'll lose it. However, it just makes for some excitement that you might not be expecting. So to be able to remove that, you basically want to push forward on the guide rod while lifting up slightly, just very, very slightly. So we'll push forward on it and lift up, and then you release the tension on it, and then that can be removed. The guide rod itself can just slide out, and then you could clean these two pieces ready for reassembly. Now, that leaves the barrel and the locking piece. Now, to take that out, you can just, the locking piece is, it's kind of hard to differentiate right there, but it's that section right there. But basically, you just lift up on that, and then you can pull the barrel out. Now that leaves the slide, and so you would want to basically clean all of this. You've got the grooves in here which mate to these slide rails on the frame. That's what locks it together, and that's what it slides back and forth on. And so you want to clean all of that and then lightly coat everything with a good quality gun oil. That will help, of course, prevent any rust or corrosion, and also lubricate the firearm so that it functions better. So let's take a look at the barrel. Now with the barrel, there's a couple pieces here. You have this locking piece right here, and then there's this button here which engages that locking piece, and I'll show you how that works in just a second. Now this can be removed. Basically, you just have to kind of fiddle with it until it comes out, and then it comes out, so then you could clean it, and as such. The little disengaging rod there, plunger, does not come out normally, so you just want to clean everything, and then you can reassemble it. It does take a little bit of finicky moving back and forth to get it in place. Now the way this works, if you see these, I'm going to take that back out so you can see it. If you see these tabs here, they're on both sides. You can see those right there. There's that side and that side. Those will lock into place in the slide in these two notches. And there's the one there on both, one on each side. And what that does is it locks the barrel to the slide so that when you fire the weapon, the barrel and the slide are locked together, which will contain the pressures in the barrel. Now, as the slide moves rearward, the locking piece will disengage and then allow the barrel and the slide to separate from each other, and the slide will continue its rearward motion. And that brief delay of time while they're locked together moving backward is enough time to allow the pressures to drop to a safe level, so that when it does open up the chamber area to eject the cartridge, the pressures are safe and it won't cause injury. Now, as far as to how this works, you've got the tabs there. If you notice on the frame of the firearm, there's this little bulkhead type thing right there. And what that does is, as the slide comes back, it will push on the plunger there, and that will physically push that down, which will then release the slide and allow everything to come back. So here we'll show you how that works. So for reassembly, so once you clean the barrel, you'd want to clean the bore, chamber, everything, lubricate everything good with some oil. So you just put that back in, and it just slides back and forth. And so make it to where the locking piece goes down. So at this point, the barrel and the slide, they're rigidly locked together. Now when that is unlocked, when you lift up on that, now it can slide back and forth. So you'd want to put the guide rod back in the spring. There is a hole here that the guide rod goes through. It's bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. That allows the guide rod to go all the way through, but the spring will stay inside, and that will allow it to compress. You put the spring in that recess, and then you push the guide rod down, and you put it back in there's a little notch on that locking piece, and it's a little saddle type notch, and the plunger head will go into that notch, and that's what holds everything together. So reassembly, well, before I show you that, I do want to cover one thing. Some people may have heard that the Beretta is unsafe to shoot because the slides will come off and can kill the person shooting it. That's a kind of a rumor that went through. However, it is based on some fact. During the initial implementation of this firearm into the U.S. military service, it was the Beretta 92F at the time. And there was, in fact, some issues where the slides were starting to crack, and there was at least one documented incident where the slide did fire off the back of the firearm when shooting on recoil, and it injured the soldier. I don't recall if it actually killed them or not. However, either way, that's not something that's good. However, the stories have been exaggerated to the point where all of these guns were just falling apart everywhere, and that really wasn't the case. When they did some investigation, what they found was the ammunition itself that the military was using at the time was overpressurized and exceeded the design specifications that was given to Beretta when they designed the pistol. And so the ammunition was causing the guns to basically batter themselves to pieces. So there was a little bit of changing. They did change the firearm somewhat to account for that. One of the things that they did, and this is going to be hard to see, so let me hold it up here. So you can see a little like round metal piece there. What that actually is it's an oversized hammer pin, and that pin goes through the frame, and it's what holds this hammer in place here. And it sticks up like that for a reason. It engages into this slot here that they milled into the frame, or the slide rather, and the slot comes up and then it stops right here. And what that does is it allows the slide to come back to that point, and then at that it would physically stop the slide from being able to go back any farther. So it's an additional safety to make sure that should there be some type of an incident, that the slide would only be able to go back that far and it would not cause injury to the shooter. So to reassemble, you have your slide rails there, and you have your the corresponding slots in the slide, and you just line those up and you push the slide back and you push it back until it's just slightly farther back from where it'd be at rest, and then you just lift that lever and lift it up, and that's reassembled. Then of course you want to make sure it's good and solid in there, function test, make sure everything is working properly, and that's pretty much all there is to it as far as the reassembly. I hope this information has been helpful for you. The goal of this series is to acquaint you with a variety of different firearms. So should you acquire one or just trying to learn more about it, you'll get some of the basic information that you might need. I welcome any questions you have or comments, and as always, I'll see you next week, and be safe.